Hey, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Mama Pies Before the Lesson podcast. I'm your host, Carlos Smiley. Now, on last week, we heard the Lord tell the prophet Habakkuk to write the vision and make it plain upon tables that he may run that reads it. In other words, document the process, put it in a book, write it in such a way that whoever reads it can understand it. Let them know that the vision is yet for an appointed time, but at the end, it shall speak and not lie. Though it tarry, wait for it, because it shall surely come. After receiving the instructions, Habakkuk found himself in a deeper, more reinforced relationship with God. He writes that the Lord is my strength, and he will make my feet like hinds' feet, and he will make me to walk upon mine high places. So on Sunday, the title of the lesson is Even So, My Redeemer Lives. The scriptural basis of our lesson is Job, chapter 19, verses 1 through 7, and again 23 through 29. Now, every week on the podcast, we attempt to lift up the faith lessons that our spiritual protagonists had to learn as they were coming into the fullness of their purpose. Hopefully, prayerfully, after today's conversation, we'll all feel more personally in tune with, able to relate to, and understanding of the challenges that our biblical heroes in the upcoming Sunday school had to deal with. So the question that I have, and maybe you do too, is how did we get from there? There being a place wherein the Lord answered a couple of pointed questions from Habakkuk. Also a place where Habakkuk finally arrived at the point where he learned to accept what the Lord allows. We saw the Lord stir up the gift that was inside of Habakkuk by telling him to document the story, write it down, write who I am and what I'm going to do, remind them of their ancestors' time in captivity, warn them that history has a funny yet sobering way of repeating itself. So how do we get from there to here? Here starts with a conversation between the Lord and the devil, relative to one of God's blessed and highly favored servants. Have you considered my servant, Job? You see, Job was a man from the land of Uz, a man perfect and upright, one that feared God and avoided messiness and evilness. Although Job was a very rich man, he still prayed for his wife and children every day. He still owned animals, had servants, and quite frankly, was known throughout as the greatest man of all the men in the East. Job had his stuff together. But there came a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan came also among them. How many of you know that there will come a day, no matter how righteous and upright you've tried to conduct your lives, there'll come a day, no matter how well you've tried to treat your neighbors, there will come a day, no matter how studious, how frugal, how caring, how smart, how hard you try to do what's right, Satan will come looking for you. Preachers preach that you're either headed towards a storm, in the middle of one, coming out of one. But just keep living. There will come a day when the devil comes looking for you. You see, he knows just what you like. He knows how you like it. He knows just how to push your buttons. He knows just who can push your buttons. He knows just how much rope to give you. And he knows just when to jerk your chain. Now, don't get all twisted. Y'all remember that he came after Jesus. But Jesus, choosing rather to suffer affliction with the people of God than to enjoy the pleasures of sin for a season. Hebrews 11:25. Have you considered my servant Job? That was the question that the Lord posed to Satan. The response was, I have, but you won't take your hands off of him. You won't stop blessing him. You won't uncover him long enough for me to get at it. See, you got your heads around it, and I can't get to him. Then the Lord told Satan, behold, all that he has is in your power. Only upon himself put not forth thine hand. In other words, just don't kill him. So Satan went forth from the presence of the Lord. He was satisfied at that point. So let's dig into this thing and try and figure out what happened and how we got here. Satan wasted no time lighting into Job. One day later, while Job's children were having one of their parties at the home of the oldest son, a messenger came to Job and said, the oxen were plowing and the donkeys grazing in the field next to us when Sabians attacked. They stole the animals and killed the field hands. I'm the only one to get out alive and tell you what happened. Now, while he was still talking, another messenger arrived and said, bolts of lightning struck the sheep and the shepherds and fried them, burned them to a crisp. I'm the only one to get out alive and tell you what happened. Now, while he was yet talking, another messenger arrived and said, Chaldeans, or Babylonians, coming from 3 directions, raided the camels and massacred the camel drivers. I'm the only one to get out alive and tell you what happened. Not that that's enough. While he was still talking, another messenger arrived and said, your children, oh God, your children were having a party at the home of the oldest brother when a tornado swept in off the desert and struck the house. It collapsed on all the young people and they all died. I'm the only one to get out alive and tell you what happened. Then Job arose and rent his mantle and shaved his head and fell down upon the ground and worshiped. And he said, naked came I out of my mother's womb, and naked shall I return. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. In all this, Job sinned not, nor charged God foolishly. Like we said, Job had a lot of stuff. He had status. Job, from an earthly perspective, had it all. And when you roll in like that, you got friends, some real and some fake. But you're never not in demand. And to that end, Job's so-called friends began to show up to check in on him. Eliphaz, basing his assumptions on the fact that Job was going through this because he had sinned. And now he was being punished. Then came Bildad, basing his assumptions on the fact that Job was a hypocrite, hiding some stuff, basically telling Job that if you were pure and upright, surely God would awake for you. And then there was Zophar. He condemns Job for his verbosity, presumption, and sinfulness, basically concluding that Job is getting less than what he deserves, stating that know that God exacts of you less than your iniquity deserves. Friends, how many of us have them? Okay, all right. Friends. He who wants friends must first show himself friendly. Job also talks with a younger guy, Elihu, who suggests to him that God will speak if we will listen. Elihu tells Job to have faith in God himself rather than demanding an explanation from God. He tells Job to change his attitude to one of humility. But then Bildad returns for a more in-depth scolding of his so-called friend. They just keep coming, don't they? Again, Bildad sharply rebukes Job, calling him everything but a child of God. In his eyes, Job is an unrepentant sinner who is doomed to hell because of his arrogance. Bildad wraps up his soliloquy, referring to Job as a hardened sinner. And if he doesn't repent, he will come to sure destruction. So on Sunday, we'll hear Job's response to his so-called friend. Although at this point, any hope of his earthly recovery appears to be dire, and he himself has major concerns as to why me relative to God's brutal treatment towards him. He's got a million thoughts running through his head. He's doing the best that he can to maintain just his sanity. But there's still one thing that he remains confident in. For I know that my Redeemer lives, and that he shall stand at the latter day upon the earth. So now we know. We know how we got from there to here. Now we know that we don't know everything that the Lord is up to. We don't know how situations are going to turn out in our lives. But we do know that God knows, and God's ways are not like our ways. And we do know that all things work together for good to them that love the Lord, to them who are called according to his purpose. For whom he did foreknow, he also did predestinate to be conformed to the image of his Son, that he might be the firstborn among many brethren. Moreover, whom he did predestinate, them he also called. And whom he called, them he also justified. And whom he justified, them he also glorified. What shall we then say to these things? If God be for us, who can be against us? Hey, I'm looking forward to next week's lesson as we go back in and dig a little deeper here on the Before the Lesson podcast. And until next time, be blessed.
And encourage yourself and say,